England in the 92nds. The town of Hyde, on the outskirts of Manchester, an old industrial town where factory chimneys had stopped smoking long ago. Here, life moved slowly. Everyone knew everyone's name. The newsagent knew the postman. The baker knew the cobbler. It was a place where trust was the most valuable asset. People trusted their neighbors, and especially, they trusted their doctor. And at the center of that trust, on the bustling market street, was the surgery of a man revered by the entire town. His name was Harold Frederick Shipman. The people of Hyde called him by an affectionate name, Dr. Fred. Look at this face, the silvery beard of a father figure, the thick glasses of an intellectual, a dignified, respectable appearance. In an era when medicine was becoming industrialized and doctors only spared 5 minutes for patients, Shipman was an exception. He was the embodiment of the old-school family doctor. He made house calls. He sat and drank tea with lonely old ladies. He listened to trivial stories about their cats or their grandchildren far away. A patient once said, "When Fred walks into the house, I feel half-healed already." He didn't just treat the illness, he treated the loneliness. To the elderly of Hyde, Shipman wasn't just a doctor, he was a living saint. Shipman was a perfectionist to the point of obsession. His surgery was always spotlessly clean. Medical records were detailed to the second. He was a control freak. Colleagues respected him, patients adored him. He was a pillar of the community. If you fell ill at 2 a.m., Fred would come. If you couldn't pay for medication, Fred would let it slide. That dedication created a perfect shield, a shield so thick that no one dared to look through it. But there is a saying, if something is too good to be true, it usually isn't. Behind that kindness, behind that gentle beard, lay a cold calculation. During his 23 years of practice in Hyde, Shipman built a terrifying record that no one noticed. His patient mortality rate was 10 times higher than any other doctor in the area. Healthy elderly people, after a visit from Dr. Fred for a tonic injection, would all pass away peacefully in their favorite armchairs. Did he come to save them, or did he come to send them off? They called him a guardian angel, but they didn't know that in that angel's hand was a syringe filled with deadly Diamorphine. And the victim count didn't stop at dozens, but hundreds. Welcome to Strange Frequency. Today, we unmask the Doctor of Death. In any town, there is a group of people who know best who lives and who dies. They are the Undertakers. In March 1998, at Massey & Son Funeral Home in Hyde, a whisper began to spread. They noticed something strange about Dr. Shipman's clients. Hey, do you find it odd? Why do Dr. Fred's patients die so often? And why do they all die in the exact same way? Usually, the gravely ill die in their beds, in pajamas, looking gaunt. But Shipman's patients? They died sitting in their armchairs. They were fully dressed, looking as if they were ready to go out. They looked like they were just napping in the middle of the day. That was a sign of a death that came too fast, too unexpectedly. Suspicion didn't stop at the funeral home. At the surgery across the street, Dr. Linda Reynolds also started noticing numbers that didn't lie. In the UK, to cremate a body, you need signatures from 2 doctors. Shipman often asked doctors at Brooke Surgery to sign the second confirmation form. When Linda Reynolds looked at Shipman's growing stack of cremation forms, she was shocked. Why does he have so many patients dying suddenly at home? This is medically and statistically impossible. Despite the risk of being seen as jealous of a colleague, Dr. Reynolds did the right thing. She reported the matter to the coroner and the police. She had thrown the first stone into the calm lake of Hyde. Police came to see Shipman. But this was 1998, and Shipman was a saint. Instead of fear, Shipman welcomed them like honored guests. He was calm, confident, and incredibly charming. Oh, you know, I specialize in the sickest cases. My patients are old and frail. It is normal for them to die. He used his medical authority to overwhelm the police. He presented medical records that looked perfect, records he had stayed up all night to fabricate on his computer. The police didn't check his criminal record regarding his past drug addiction. They didn't contact the victims' families. They trusted the white coat more than they trusted their professional intuition. The 17th of April, 1998. Police conclusion, no sign of criminal activity. The case was closed. Shipman was exonerated. He had won, and this victory caused his arrogance to double. This is the greatest tragedy of this case. If the police had investigated harder in March, these 3 women would not have had to die. The system's failure gave Shipman a license to kill for 3 more months. He thinks he is untouchable. He thinks he is smarter than everyone else. But that excessive confidence led him to his final mistake. He is about to pick the wrong victim, a woman who was not as lonely as the others. The real storm is about to make landfall in Hyde. Throughout his murderous career, Shipman often selected easy targets, reclusive widows with few relatives, or the frail and senile. But on the 24th of June, 1998, arrogance blinded him. He chose Kathleen Grundy. Mrs. Grundy was not a senile old woman. At 81, she was healthy, sharp, and extremely wealthy. She was the former mayoress of Hyde, a figure with a voice, respected by the entire town. Most importantly, she had an extremely intelligent daughter. That morning, Shipman arrived under the guise of collecting a blood sample. That was a lie. No blood sample was taken. Only a massive dose of Diamorphine was pumped directly into the vein of that respectable woman. Angela Woodruff wasn't just Kathleen Grundy's daughter. She was a talented solicitor in Warwickshire. A few days after her mother's passing, she received a letter from a local law firm, accompanied by a brand new will. When Angela read the will, she couldn't believe her eyes. Not because of the content, but the format. Her mother was a meticulous, tidy woman. But this document was crumpled, typed carelessly, and riddled with spelling errors. It looked like it had been drafted by a child or someone in a rush. And the content was ludicrous. I leave all my estate, valued at £386,000, to my doctor, Harold Shipman, to reward him for his care. £386,000. And not a single penny left to her children or grandchildren. Angela looked at the signature. This isn't Mom's signature. The signature on the will was large, shaky, and clumsy. The forger had tried to mimic it but failed miserably. To a lawyer like Angela, this paper wasn't a will, it was a confession. Why would an intelligent doctor, who had outsmarted the police for 20 years, do something so stupid? Psychologists call this self-destructive arrogance. Shipman believed his reputation was so immense that no one would dare question him, no matter how absurd the will was. He even left his fingerprints all over the paper. He thought he was God, but in that moment, he was nothing more than a greedy, clumsy, petty thief. Angela didn't hesitate. She went to the police immediately. And this time, the police couldn't look away. The accuser wasn't an undertaker or a rival doctor. She was a lawyer, and she brought concrete physical evidence. The forged will. Detective Stan Egerton took on the case. He immediately recognized the anomaly. If he forged a will to steal assets, would he kill her to get the money faster? That question threw open the gates of hell. An exhumation order was issued. Shipman was summoned for questioning. He remained calm, denying everything. He said, "She was old. Her mind was wandering. Maybe she just wanted to thank me." But he didn't know that Mrs. Grundy's body was talking to the forensic pathologist, and the story she told reeked of morphine. In both Western and Eastern cultures, disturbing a grave is the ultimate taboo. It is in violation of the eternal sleep of the departed. But Angela Woodruff and the police knew they had no other choice. To find justice, they had to wake Kathleen up. In August 1998, the exhumation order was signed. It was a decision that shocked the entire town of Hyde. People whispered. They couldn't believe their respected doctor was the reason a former mayor had to be pulled from the ground. A large tent was erected around the grave. The police wanted to maintain as much privacy and dignity as possible for Mrs. Grundy, but a tense atmosphere hung over the entire cemetery. Night fell. The work began. Under the cold glare of floodlights, layers of earth were peeled back. The air was thick with the smell of damp soil and an eerie silence. The oak coffin was slowly hoisted up. Shipman, at home at this moment, knew exactly what was happening. He feigned calm to his wife. "They won't find anything. She died of old age. But he forgot one thing: the dead can speak. Mrs. Grundy's body was taken straight to the forensic lab. There, the UK's top pathologists were waiting. They weren't looking for wounds. They were looking for something invisible, hidden in blood and tissue. Samples of muscle tissue, liver, and hair from Mrs. Grundy were fed into a mass spectrometer. Shipman had used diamorphine, medical heroin. He assumed that after 2 months of burial, the drug would have decomposed. But he was gravely mistaken. Morphine is a highly stable substance, especially in adipose tissue and hair. The results flashing on the screen stunned even the forensic experts. Mrs. Grundy's body contained a massive amount of morphine. It was enough to kill a large, healthy man, let alone an 8 one-year-old woman. Crucially, the timing of the drug entering her system matched perfectly with the 3-hour window before her death, exactly when Shipman was at her house. When police presented the toxicology results, Shipman didn't flinch. He played his final card, a vile, desperate lie. He said, "You don't know. Mrs. Grundy was a closet drug addict. She abused opiates for years. I had to prescribe them to help her wean off." He pointed to the medical records on his computer where a note read, "Patient abusing drugs." An 8 one-year-old ex-mayor? A dignified lady? A junkie? This lie didn't save him. It only fueled the police's determination. It was an insult to the deceased. And more importantly, the cyber police had just found evidence showing that line, "patient abusing drugs," was typed into the computer hours after she had already died. The computer. It's the computer again. It is about to become the most damning witness against Dr. Death. Harold Shipman was one of the first doctors in the UK to digitize his medical records. He was proud of it. He believed that storing data on a computer kept his clinic modern, tidy, and most importantly, private. Shipman believed a computer was just like a paper notebook. If you write it wrong, you tear it out. If you miss something, you squeeze it in. He thought that when he deleted a line of text on the screen, that text would vanish into the void forever. But Shipman was a good doctor, not a computer engineer. He didn't know a fundamental rule of the digital world. Data never truly disappears, it just hides. And that old, clunky machine was silently recording all his crimes, second by second. When Shipman claimed Mrs. Grundy was an addict and presented the medical records as proof, Detective Stan Egerton was suspicious. He sent Shipman's computer to the digital forensics lab. Here, cyber detectives began surgery on the hard drive. The software Shipman used was called Microdoc. Experts discovered a hidden feature that Shipman was completely unaware of. It was the audit trail. Every time Shipman created, edited, or deleted a note, the software automatically recorded the exact date, hour, minute, and second of that action. And most importantly, this timestamp could not be edited by a normal user. It was absolute, objective evidence. Let's examine Kathleen Grundy's file. Shipman claimed she had been addicted to drugs for years. But when experts checked the edit history, they saw a horrifying truth. The note, "Patient abuses drugs," wasn't written years ago. It was created on the 24th of June, 1998 at 2 p.m. That is 3 hours after she had died. Shipman killed her, went home for lunch, then sat down at his computer to fabricate these lies. He was trying to smear the reputation of the deceased to cover up his own sins. The computer had caught him red-handed. This discovery opened a new line of inquiry. Police asked themselves, if he forged Mrs. Grundy's records, did he do the same to others? They began scanning the entire hard drive containing data on over 3,000 patients. The results returned were a nightmare. Hundreds of files had been altered. The script was always identical. Healthy patient is greater than, sudden death is greater than, Shipman opens computer is greater than, inserts heart disease, shortness of breath, chest pain into the record is greater than, prints death certificate. He had performed this process hundreds of times, mechanically. He thought he was a genius manipulator, but in reality, he had left a well-worn path full of footprints leading straight to his prison cell. The soulless machine had become the toughest witness, a witness that did not know how to lie and could not be bribed. When the police combined the computer data with the death list, a terrifying panoramic view emerged. Red dots scattered all over the map of the small town of Hyde. Shipman didn't just kill. He performed a slow-motion massacre right under the authorities' noses. His victims were not enemies. They were gentle old ladies, living alone, the people who trusted him the most. And even more frightening, all the cases followed a single script, a standard operating procedure that Shipman had perfected over 2 decades. His preferred time of the crime, the afternoon. After lunch, when the victim's children had gone to work and the neighbors were resting, that was when Dr. Fred went hunting. He didn't need to break in. He was invited in, invited for tea. He told the victims, "I need to take some blood for a heart test, or I'll give you a vitamin shot to help you sleep better." No one suspected him. Why suspect the doctor who has cared for you for 20 years? Shipman was a master of dosage. He knew exactly how many milligrams were enough to stop a frail heart without causing pain. The victims didn't struggle, they just felt sleepy. A peaceful sleep and an eternal one. Graphics simulating the effect of morphine on the brain. Neural signals shutting down one by one. A humming sound, like diving underwater. It was a merciful death in his twisted understanding. No blood, no screaming, no violence, just absolute silence. This is the creepiest detail in Shipman's psychological profile. After the injection, he didn't flee. He sat down opposite the victim. He watched them fade away. He checked their pulse. He witnessed the moment life left the body. He enjoyed it. He felt the power of a god. In that cozy living room, there were only 2 people, the one giving death and the one receiving it. He was the only audience member for the final act of their lives. After the victim stopped breathing, he began to stage the scene. He adjusted their sitting posture to look natural, as if they had fallen asleep. He wanted the death to look aesthetic. Sometimes, sickness comes with petty greed. Police found piles of cheap female jewelry in Shipman's garage. Old wedding rings, fake pearl necklaces, worthless souvenirs. He didn't take them to sell because he was wealthy. He took them as trophies. Then came the final act. He called the victim's children, or called the ambulance. He played the role of the grieving doctor. Your mother went peacefully. I was with her until the very last minute. A lie, cruel to the bone. The victims' families even thanked him. They sent cards, gave gifts to thank the man who killed their mother. That was the pinnacle of manipulation. He didn't just steal a life. He stole the truth and the trust of those left behind. He repeated this process 250 times. To understand the monster, we must return to the place where it was born. 1963, Nottingham. 7-year-old Harold Shipman is watching his mother, Vera Shipman, slowly dying from terminal lung cancer. Vera is in excruciating pain, but every time the family doctor arrives, everything changes. Shipman watches his every move intently. The way he picks up the syringe, the way he administers the drug into his mother's arm. Just seconds after the morphine injection, the pain vanishes. Vera smiles and drifts into a peaceful sleep. In the eyes of that 7-year-old boy, that wasn't medicine. It was a miracle. That doctor wasn't a mortal man. He was a god with the power to banish pain. That image was etched into Shipman's impressionable mind. Morphine equals peace. Shipman became determined to become a doctor to possess that power. He studied hard, graduated, and began practicing in the town of Todmorden in 1974. He was a rising star. But behind the enthusiastic exterior, Shipman was hiding a dark secret. He was an addict. Not to alcohol, but to pethidine, a synthetic painkiller similar to morphine. He began writing fake prescriptions for non-existent patients to obtain the drugs for his own use. He injected himself daily. Sometimes he would get high right during work hours, passing out in the middle of the clinic, and his colleagues would have to help him up. He lied, claiming he had epilepsy. In 1975, Shipman was caught red-handed. He was charged with forgery and fraud to obtain controlled drugs. He was fined and forced to attend rehab. This should have been the end of his medical career, but the British medical system at the time was too lenient with wayward doctors. After a short stint in rehab, the General Medical Council, GMC, deemed him recovered and no longer a danger. They handed his medical license back to him. A terrible mistake. They thought they had saved a talent. In reality, they had just released a hungry tiger back into the wild. In 1977, Shipman moved to Hyde to restart his life. And this time, he no longer injected the drugs into himself. He found a new, more potent source of pleasure. Criminal psychologists analyzed that Shipman shifted his addiction from an addiction to a substance, pethidine, to an addiction to a behavior, killing. He wanted to recreate the moment of his mother's death, but this time, he wasn't the helpless boy watching. He was the doctor holding the needle. He wanted to control life and death just as that doctor had done years ago. He wanted to become God in the eyes of his patients. And tragically, his first victims in Hyde became the test subjects for this new addiction to power. In 1977, he arrived in Hyde, and the death toll began to rise. The devoted son was dead. Only Dr. Death remained. When studying serial killers, we usually search for motives, money or sex. But with Harold Shipman, neither is satisfactory. He was a high-earning doctor living in a comfortable home with modern amenities. He had a happy marriage spanning decades with Primrose, a wife who worshipped him. He didn't kill out of poverty except for the final forged will due to sheer arrogance. He also never sexually assaulted his victims. So what was he seeking? What drives a man who has everything to accept such terrible risks? The answer lies in a dark psychological concept: the God complex. Doctors are trained to fight the Grim Reaper. They fight for life. But sometimes, they fail. Shipman didn't want to fail. He wanted to be the decision maker. For Shipman, the power to save lives wasn't enough. The power to take lives was supreme. He wanted to decide, today you will die. Not because of God, not because of fate, but because of me. In the moment the needle entered the body, Shipman felt a rush of pleasure run down his spine. He controlled time. He decided that this woman would never watch the evening news again. He switched off the switch of their life like turning off a light bulb. The God complex also manifests through extreme arrogance, narcissism. Shipman always looked down on his colleagues. He considered them ignorant, slow, and inferior to him. He frequently argued with and mocked other doctors during professional meetings. Even when facing the police, he maintained a superior attitude. He thought, what do these police know about medicine? How could they catch me? I am the great Dr. Fred. It was this disdain that made him careless. He didn't bother to hide his tracks thoroughly because he thought no one was smart enough to find them. He didn't see a murderer in the mirror. He saw a supreme being, one who was performing mercy by releasing the frail elderly from the burden of life. Like drugs, this feeling of power is addictive and builds tolerance. At first, he only killed once every few months, but later, the frequency became denser. There were weeks he killed 2 to 3 people. He needed that dose of power constantly to feel satisfied. He became an addicted predator. If he didn't kill, he felt restless and empty. That is why he killed Mrs. Grundy, a target too dangerous and prominent. The addiction had clouded his reason. He was trapped in his own loop. In the morning, a doctor saving lives. In the afternoon, a reaper taking lives. And he enjoyed that contradiction. He was a living paradox, a monster in a white coat, but his stage light was about to go out. October 1999. The trial of Harold Shipman begins at Preston Crown Court. This was not just a trial. It was a media circus. The entire world held its breath to see how the law would deal with the killer doctor. Outside the courthouse, people screamed. People wept. But inside the armored prison van, Shipman maintained a chilling composure. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his silver beard. He was preparing to step onto his stage. He did not enter the court like a defendant trembling before a life sentence. He entered like a professor preparing to lecture ignorant students. That arrogance was the only weapon he had left. When called to the witness stand, Shipman did something that shocked the jury. He argued back and forth with the prosecutor. He used complex medical terminology to confuse everyone. He ridiculed the lawyer's questions as silly. He turned his back on the victims' families. Did he not dare look them in the eye? No. He did not bother to look at them. In his eyes, they were just nuisances hindering his work. He adamantly denied the crimes. "I didn't kill anyone. I only helped them relieve pain." But his medical charade collapsed completely when evidence regarding the forged will and computer data was presented. Shipman was tongue-tied. He couldn't explain why medical records were altered after the patient had died. He began to stammer. The God facade began to crack. January 31st, 2000. Judgment hour. After 6 days of deliberation, the jury has reached a decision. The entire courtroom holds its breath. For the death of Kathleen Grundy, guilty. For the death of Joan Melia, guilty. For the death of Winifred Meller, guilty. 15 times the word guilty rang out. Justice reclaimed for 15 lives. Judge Thane Forbes looked straight into Shipman's eyes and said, "You have utilized the trust of patients to perpetrate wicked, wicked crimes." The sentence, life imprisonment with a whole life order. He will die in prison. Shipman is dragged away, but he doesn't collapse. He doesn't cry or beg. He chooses one final weapon to take revenge on society: silence. Police know he killed more than the number 15. They want him to confess to find the identities of the other victims, estimated at over 200 people. The victims' families want an explanation, an apology. But Shipman does not give them that. He knows that as long as he remains silent, he still holds control. He keeps the secrets of the remaining deaths like a private treasure. He deprives the victims' families of closure even while sitting behind bars. That is cruelty to the very end. H&P Wakefield, the prison known as the Monster Mansion, holding the most dangerous criminals in Britain. Harold Shipman was locked away here, stripped of all titles, spat upon by the world. But inside his head, he was still playing one final game of chess. The 13th of January 2004, just one day before his 58th birthday. At 6:20 a.m., a guard discovered Shipman hanging by bed sheets tied to the window bars. He was dead. Why this specific timing? Many believe it was a final cold calculation. If Shipman died before the age of 60, his wife Primrose would be entitled to his full NHS pension, around £100,000, and a lump sum. Even in death, he successfully outsmarted the system. Shipman took every secret to the grave. No suicide note, no confession, no apology. After his death, the Shipman inquiry was conducted. The final conclusion shocked humanity. The number of positively identified victims was 215. The estimated count exceeded 250. He officially became the most prolific serial killer in modern history, far surpassing names like Jack the Ripper or Ted Bundy. And his weapon was not a knife or a gun, but trust and a syringe. For the victims' families, Shipman's death brought no comfort. It brought anger. He was a coward who took the easy way out. He deprived us of the chance to ask him, why? That was Shipman's final psychological blow to them, eternal silence. The town of Hyde has found peace again today, but the scar remains. The case created the Shipman effect. It completely changed British medical procedures. Controlled drugs are monitored strictly, death certification is complex, and the power of GPs is scrutinized closely. But the price paid was the permanent loss of innocence. Before Shipman, people trusted doctors unconditionally. After Shipman, every time the people of Hyde see a syringe, an invisible doubt rises in their hearts. Let us remember them, not as numbers in Shipman's medical records, but as human beings, people who lived, who loved, and who placed their trust in the wrong hands. The story of Harold Shipman is a chilling reminder. Monsters don't always hide in the shadows with fangs and claws. Sometimes, they stand right under the light, smiling kindly, wearing the Savior's cloak. Thank you for joining Strange Frequency on this long-form profile. If this truth gave you chills, please leave a like and subscribe. Do you trust your doctor? Let me know in the comments below. I am Strange Frequency, and I will see you on the next frequency. Video ends.